Hi, everyone. My name is Lori Peak, and I am the principal investigator for the National Science Foundation supported Converge facility, which is headquartered at the Natural Hazard Center at the University of Colorado Boulder. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Converge webinar series. Thank you for being here today. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. The caption recording and slides will be posted on the Converge website at converge.colorado.edu. Should you have questions or comments during the webinar, please use the Q&A box or the chat box. If the presenters are unable to respond during this brief webinar, we will provide and post written responses on the Converge webinar webpage for this session. Today, during this 30-minute webinar, you are going to hear from Professor Joe Wortman, who is the H.R. Bird Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Washington, and the Director of the NERI Rapid Facility. We will also hear from Troy Tanner, who is Principal Software Engineer in the Applied Physics Laboratory at the University of Washington and IT Director for the NERI Rapid Facility. We are so excited to welcome Joe and Troy back to the Converge webinar series. They last joined us almost precisely a year ago in December of 2019, which somehow feels like a lifetime ago. And during that presentation, they provided an overview of the equipment and capabilities of the Rapid facility and also shared progress with the development of Rapid's iOS app, widely known as the RApp. You can view a recording of that presentation at the Converge webinar webpage. Today, we are all looking forward to learning more about the most recent developments with the Rapid facility and specifically with the new advanced questionnaire features in the RApp. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the SlideShare capabilities over to Joe so he can take it from here. Joe, thank you very much for being here.
Okay, thank you, Laurie, and good day, everyone. Thank you for being there, wherever you are, but being with us today on the webinar. I'm going to begin with just a very brief introduction and update on RApp, and then I'm going to turn this over to Troy. RApp is the Rapid app, and just as a quick overview, RApp is a mobile application that is developed and it's optimized for GPS-enabled iPads. And the important thing with GPS-enabled iPads means that they have to have the cellular capability. It doesn't mean that it has to have the cellular capability enabled. It's just that of the two models of iPad, it has to have the cellular capability in order to have the GPS function. We have lots of these and they are free to borrow from the Rapid facility. We're happy to loan them out. We put them in a FedEx envelope and can get them out to you if you're going to be using it in a natural hazard investigation. RApp complies with NSF cybersecurity guidelines, which is really important because it means that once you're in RApp, you're directly linked into DesignSafe, as I'll discuss in just a moment. And RApp also works offline, which is really important for working in post-disaster settings. RApp includes a whole range of features, including, among many others, the ability to take photos, record audio and video. It includes a checklist function that you can develop your own checklist or use some pre-populated checklist. It has rapid instrumentation functions. So for example, if you're going to use one of our laser scanners, a lot of the metadata on the laser scanner is already built in. And so you can collect add scan, and it will be a way of linking that scan to a larger DesignSafe HazMapper data field that is collected with RApp. It also has the ability to preload maps into RApp for offline use, and those are KML formatted, basically Google Earth formatted maps that you can create, upload into RApp, and then take into the field. And it has always had the ability to work with questionnaires, and now as you're going to hear today, it has the ability to work with advanced questionnaires, our next major rollout, which has just happened. It's also fully customizable. So if you're going to use only one or two or just a fraction of these capabilities, you can customize it. So for example, when I use it just to take photos, I just enable that function and everything else disappears. So it's very simple to use in the field. We are committed to maintaining and to expanding RApp over the duration of the Rapid facility. And so we have a lot that's coming up. The next big rollout will be an iPhone version of RApp. We also have a Teams function that's underway that will allow individuals to communicate in the field while they're collecting data, among some other plans. I also, just as third item, just want to say that RApp is developed specifically to work and to interface directly with DesignSafe, the NERI cyber infrastructure component. There's a mural I took a photo of in Miami a couple of years ago. And this is our relationship with DesignSafe. It shows our deep love and partnership with DesignSafe. This is Charge My Heart. But really what I want to emphasize with this is that this allows DesignSafe to develop software in parallel to our own development. And then we're able to essentially plug directly into DesignSafe. And so everything that happens in RApp gets pushed and synced in to DesignSafe. And that can happen in real time. If you have a cellular or Wi-Fi connection, it can happen offline later when you come into a Wi-Fi connection as well. But that's important because the data is getting backed up and it allows you to work with an office-based team as well. And then that data can be displayed in DesignSafe's HasMapper geospatial web interface. I had a lot of fun writing this title. What is RAP's role in the Rapid facility? It is part of our science plan, and our science plan emphasizes cross-scale data collection, cross-geospatial scale, temporal scale, and social scales, and also integration of multidisciplinary data sets. And we really, the advanced questionnaires in particular, really get to some of the support for the social sciences and for integrating data sets. And this is just one example of a social science data set that could be, for example, a survey that could be captured with RApp or recorded with RApp, and the way that you can integrate that with natural science or with engineering data sets on disaster, on damage intensities, among other kind of measures, that can get integrated in RApp and then directly pushed into DesignSafe. And there's a whole series of ways that you can use RApp for your work. You could use it to combine interviews or surveys and then directly link that to photos of damage intensity or engineering surveys of damage intensity. You can use it to develop a sampling design in GIS and upload it into RApp and then guide that effort in the field. And you can use it to interface and coordinate with an office-based or a remote team through the direct syncing of data as it's being collected. And then they can support and modify your field investigation on the fly if that's necessary. And so these are just three quick examples. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Troy, who will be talking about the advanced questionnaire function. And Troy, you are muted. Okay.
Yes, I just saw that. Hello, everyone. I am Troy Tanner, and I am a software engineer at the University of Washington. And my team is responsible for developing all of the software within the Rapid facility, including RApp. I want to start off here by just giving you a quick overview that you can go to later of some useful URLs. So the first one is the DesignSafe. So you need to use DesignSafe for user accounts and projects. So if you sign into any of the RApp or what we call Mission Control, which is our website, you sign in using your DesignSafe credentials. So you need to have a DesignSafe account before you can access those. Also, in order for data to be synced from RApp to DesignSafe, you need to have a project set up in DesignSafe so that you can select it within RApp so that we know where to put the data within DesignSafe. Below that is the Rapid facility URL. So if you would like to contact us to request an iPad to use, or if you have any comments or questions about what you see here today, please go to that website and you'll find contact information for us. And finally, the bottom URL is for the mission control portion of RApp, which is what I'm going to start with. And that shows how you actually create and manage your questionnaires. And so the URL to access that yourself is right there. So once you create your DesignSafe account, you can go to that mission control URL and start setting up questionnaires. So the first thing I'd like to do is thank Lori and the Converge group for all of their great collaboration and input on the advanced questionnaires. As she said, last year we demonstrated RApp and we had a questionnaire feature, which is pretty simple. In the last year, we've been very busy. We had quite a few meetings and focus groups to try to figure out how could we improve questionnaires, what kind of features would be very useful to the community. And since then, we've been working like crazy to build out all these features and test them. And so we're really excited to be able to share with you today both the ability to create these advanced questionnaires, use them on the iPad, and also within our mission control site, download the data to use right there, in CSV format. So I'm going to reload the page here. So this is showing the mission control just to show you what it looks like when you come in. So when you come in to mission control, you see this graphic and then it animates up. And since I was already signed in, I don't have to log in again. But if I wasn't signed in, it would prompt me for my design safe credentials. And so this is sort of the landing page for mission control. And we're in the checklist section. And I'm going to, on the left there, I'm going to select questionnaire templates because this is where you go to manage your templates. So what this shows is all of the questionnaire templates that I have created. And these templates will be used in RApp on the iPad to actually, fill out questionnaires, conduct surveys. So I have one that I've created, for the demo today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly recreate it to show you how it was developed. And then we'll go onto the iPad and I'll show how it's completed. And then finally, I'll show you, how you can access the data after it's been collected. So once you're in this questionnaire template section, the way you create a new questionnaire template is you select the plus button at the bottom right of the screen. And when you do that, a little box will pop up asking you what's the name of the questionnaire, and you have the option of a description field. So we'll call it, the real-time demo, and this will just, demonstrate the advanced questionnaire capabilities. All right, and I hit create. And once I've done that, it's now actually created the template. Now, one thing to note is you don't need to actually click save to save anything. As you create things, as you edit them, as you delete them, they're automatically saved and synced to our server. So you don't need to find a save anywhere or manually save. It'll do it automatically for you. So when you create a new questionnaire, it starts out with a very bare bones template like this. And what you'll see is info, which you see here. It has the name at the top. It has the description I typed in, and it has all of the global controls for the questionnaire. It creates one section by default. The questions have to all be grouped into at least one section, and you can add multiple sections. And it has an ending page where you can have, I'll click it quickly, so you can actually, at the end of the questionnaire, you can have a little message that's displayed. So going back to the info at the top here, I'm going to go through these options really quickly. So when you create a questionnaire, likely you'll have multiple sections and you'll have quite a few questions. When the questionnaire is actually filled out on the iPad, you have two options for how it's displayed. The default is multiple pages mode, which means every question is displayed on its own page. And that's probably the most useful format for complex questions, when you have a lot of content, when you want somebody to input text, and especially if you have any branching logic. If you have any places where if they answer one thing, they see a different sequence of questions versus clicking another one. Another option for the display mode is a single page, and that would simply just display all the questions in a long stack. Now in single page mode, the branching capability doesn't actually work because it's not then loading the questions sequentially. It just displays all the questions in a long list. If you do have branching options within a single, and you select single page, you will see in the questionnaire where it wants you to go if you select a certain question, but it won't actually manage that and hide things for you automatically. So I'd recommend starting with the multiple pages view. Another option, as you see it, you saw it probably toggling off and on as I was selecting between these. If you have multiple pages mode on, there is another option for, do you want to allow somebody to be able to go back while they're filling out a questionnaire? So if allow back is yes, then if somebody's moving through the questionnaire and they realize they made a mistake or they want to go back and check something, they're able to go back however many pages they need to. If allow back is set to no, then a user will not be able to go back in the questionnaire. They can only move forward. And the last control here is required. It's the default setting for required. Each questionnaire can be set to be required. In other words, the user cannot move forward until they have completed it, or required can be set to false, which means that question doesn't have to be completed. What this setting here does at the high level is it determines by default, when you create a new question, is it required by default or is it set to false? So we have cases where some users want everything to be required, so it makes sense just to set this to true. But we have other cases where people don't want any of the questions to be required. And so rather than forcing them to set required to false every time they create a question, they can just set it here to false. And by default, every question will be false. But of course, you can overwrite that in each question's settings. So that sort of covers this high level view. So I'm going to go into the sections here and select the first section. So to create a question, you first need to select a section that you want the question to reside in. So I've selected the first section, and a section has an optional heading field. So I'll just put in some basic text here. So this is our default section. And there's this option at the bottom that says, when you leave this section, where do you want it to go? So if you had a branching scheme set up, for example, and I'll build one in a little bit, where if somebody said yes, you take them to section 2, and if they said no, you take them to section 3. When the user leaves section 2, you probably don't want them to go to section 3. You want them to go around section 3 into somewhere else. So this determines how somebody flows out of that section. In this case, we're just going to leave it going to the next section. And so to create a question, there is a button at the very bottom that says Add Item. So you select that to add an item. And these are all of the things that you can create. So within a section, you can create another section, which will be added after the current section. You also can add the question types that you see below in the new question option. And finally, you can create a new page. So you can create a text page. For example, if you are moving through a questionnaire and you want to display a lot of verbiage describing something a user needs to know or instructions on what to do from that point afterwards, you can just create a text page that really isn't a question. It just can contain a lot of text, more so than you can typically put into a question item. So I'm going to select the first question type. I'm going to select a yes, no. And when I select that, you can see to the right, under S1, under section 1, it has created the first question, Q1. And if you look to the right of that, there's a little icon, a Y and an N, and that is the icon for each question type. So whenever, and as I build this out, you'll see every question type has a unique icon. So at a glance, when you look at this menu on the right, you'll start to see where your sections are. You'll see the list of questions, and you'll see what type they are. In addition, when a question is active, when it's selected, as it is now, it's in bright green, and the top right of the question panel itself tells you what type of question it is. And that'll be a little more important later, have some actual options and controls with that. And so moving to the left here, you'll see Q1. So once again, that's just confirming you're looking at question 1. And below that is that required setting. Because in the info page, I had the required set to true, by default, this is set to true. So I could set it to false if I want, but I'll leave it true for this case. You also have the option of having a heading for every question. The heading and the instructions, the top field here and the instructions are optional. So you don't need to enter anything. But what you do need to enter is the actual question for the question, the text that you want to display. So I'll change this a little bit. So we'll ask, are you ready to start the questionnaire? It's a yes or no. So that'll be a good start. And one thing I want you to note is right below this question field, which is what the user sees, is a little block of text below that kind of looks like a variable name. And that's what it is. This is actually a string that we refer to as the question variable. It's nothing that a user will ever see on the screen, but when you go to download the data later, you will have the option of displaying the question or identifying it by this term. So we have through here these little variables attached to questions, attached to different options, multi-selects, things like that, that allow you to specify a terse term that means something to you, that if you're importing the CSV data into scripts and whatnot, you're able to look for those values instead of, you know, free-form text. That also allows you to create questionnaires where the free-form text might be changed a little bit, but the actual text strings, the variables that you're searching for in your scripts can all point to the same one. So I could type something like, let's see here, where should we type it? You know, are you ready to start? So I can change it to that. By default, what it does is it looks at the text that you put in the top field and it, you know, tries to create a good variable name version of that, but you can go down and overwrite that whenever you want. If you do go back up and change that question, then it's going to change the variable again for you. So below that, there is a yes and no option. It's a yes, no question. So that means your only options are yes or no. And just like the question, you can change the text if you want. And there is a little variable below. For yes, no, it's pretty straightforward. Also of note, and I'll get into this a little bit later, there is this option of a go-to. So on certain question types, that is question types where a user has to select only one option, we have these things called the go-to, and that is what controls our branching. So if you select go-to, it's going to ask you, where do you want the user to go after they've answered this question? So because we don't have any other questions, and it's not really a place they can go to. And the sub-question to the right of that, that allows you to display a follow-up question if the user makes that selection. So for example, if they answer yes, and you maybe want to gather some more information like text fields, or you want to clarify a little bit further, you can display another multiple choice option below that. And to do that, you use the sub-question option. I'll show an example of that in a little bit. But this is basically, you know, the simplest way just to create a question. And finally, at the bottom, we have this add decline option. So if you want a question to be required, but you want to allow a user to not answer it because maybe they don't know or they're not comfortable answering it, we have this add decline option for pretty much all of our questions and sub-questions. So if you click that, it creates a default decline option that will always be the last item in the list. And we have a prefer not to answer as our, you know, default display, but you can change it to whatever you want. And you can also change whatever you want the variabilized form of that to be. So the decline option works a little bit different depending on if it's a multiple choice or if it's a text field, but it's available for all questions. And with some questions, such as these where it's a multiple choice, you have two ways of viewing it. You can view it as a list and you can view it as a menu. So while you're editing a questionnaire, the way that you know you're in edit mode is at the very top right of the screen, there's this little pencil right now that's highlighted in white, which indicates you're in edit mode. If you select that, you will go to preview mode, and that gives you a view of what the question is going to look like actually on the iPad. And so that's a good way to confirm that everything is in order and that you have the text reading as you like. It also gets rid of all of the other components that you use to build the questionnaire. So this shows you that on the iPad, we'd see the question like this, and there would be a decline option. If you want to change that, just go back to edit mode, and you can remove that decline option. Because this is a multiple choice question type, when you view it, you'll see that you've got these little circle buttons, kind of like radio buttons next to each option. If instead of showing those radio buttons during the question, you want to see it as a pull-down list, which is, you know, more useful when you have a really long sequence of questions, you can select the menu option and once again go to the review mode, and you will see what it looks like, you know, with the yes, no. So this is indicating that when a user selects this top bar here, they're going to see, you know, this yes, no. So I think that covers most of the basics of the options within each questionnaire type. So I'll create a few of these and give you a sense of what it's like to build them. So the next one I'm gonna create is a location question. So I'll just say add item, and I'll select location, and it adds this question to the list, and I'll go to review mode. And what this question type is useful for is you want to actually locate something very precisely while you're filling out the questionnaire. So we know what your geolocation, what your position is when you fill out the questionnaire, but you may be standing in front of a building, or you may be some distance from the spot that you're really interested in. So what this question type does is it allows you, while you're filling out the questionnaire, to really zoom in and pinpoint an area on the map, and it will attempt to retrieve an address for you. So that's useful for if you want to fine tune the location of things. Going back into edit mode, I'm going to create another type. I'm going to create what's called a multi-select here. So that is a multiple choice that allows you to enter all of the options, sort of like the yes, no, but the difference is, and I'll select the review mode, a user can select one or more of those. So in a single select, typically displayed as a radio button, a user can only select one option. A multi-select allows a user to select multiple options. And so just like with the yes, no, you have the capability to come in, change all of the options, change, and change the variable. Changing that, we can add another single select. And with a single select, just like the multiple choice, it's very much like the yes, no. The only difference is you can have more than two options, so you can reduce this down. And if you had this is where if you wanted to do a branch, you could actually use the go to. So I'm going to create another section first, so that to create that branching capability. So I created a section 2, and I'm going to create another section for section 3. So now I have these two sections. And if I go into section 2 and I create a multiple choice, a single select, and I go into section 3, and maybe I'll create a yes, no. Now I have some questions that exist after this question 4. So now if I hit the go to, I can select it on the list as question 5. And if I select this one, it'll show, question 6. So from here, you're able to select the go-to option. You can hit X if you want to end it, and it confirms you want to actually end that. Or if it doesn't have one assigned, you can select it from the list. Now you can only select a question after the currently selected question. So since we're in question 4, I have to select question 5 or 6. So going back to this, we have these single selects. Another type of question type that you can add is a date time. And so it looks like a calendar icon to the right here. So there's not many controls you have for a date time. You can change your question type, you can change instructions. The gray box just indicates there's going to be a text field. So a date time, when a user is actually filling it out, is going to pull up a calendar for them to select. Another type that you can select is a number. So a number is similar to a date time. It's just going to be a text field that can capture a number. It's going to restrict it to integer values. If you have the top right here, if you have integer selected, if you have decimal selected, it'll allow decimal number. So if you want to kind of control what the input is, and you'll see to the right of that Q7 on the right here, the icon changes, as we change the type. Another type of question that we can add is a range. So a range is sort of an ordered list of values. If you wanted to, for example, somebody to rate something on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, whatever you want, you just update the number of the range you want, and then it'll present that to the user. And if you want to see what it looks like in the iPad, it's going to look like this. They're just presented with a range of options. And like with all of the other question types, they can always have the decline option included, if you don't want them to add it. And finally, another question type that I'm going to show here is the matrix. And a matrix is really just a group of either single select or multi-select options. So by default, I'm going to go into view here. You get 2 rows and 2 columns. You can change those to as many as you want. Right now it's in the single select, which means you can only make 1 selection per row. If I went back and I changed this to a multi-select, then I could select multiple options per row, and we'll see that when we're actually on the iPad. And that basically is a quick overview of all of the different question types. Now at the bottom, next to the add item button, there are a couple other things to look at. especially when you're working with branching, it can be a little bit complicated to remember where everything goes. So you have this question flow button that if you select that, it will bring up a list of all of the questions, just like you see on the right there. The difference is it also shows the branches and where they go. So you can see we've got a branch coming out of Q4 and one option goes to Q5 and the other option goes into Q9. And you can select that question itself and it will be displayed on the left here. And as you roll over the branches, you get a little readout of where's it coming from, what the response selected was. So in case this is response 1, and then where it goes. So as you build these up and they get more complicated, you can come to the question flow here to get a sense of where everything's going. And if you do want to actually reorder any of the questions, there's a reorder items button that displays the list again in a slightly different format, displaying the actual name of the questions. And so you can just select those, click and drag and reorder the questions, and you can move them to different sections, and you can even reorder the sections themselves. If you have a lot of sections with a lot of content, you can hit the minimize button and that will reduce it to make it a little bit easier to work with. So that's just a quick overview of most of the capabilities within the questionnaire builder. So I'm going to leave this one right here. I'm going to go back to the starting page with the one I built in advance, and I'm just going to open that one quickly just to give you a sense of what the completed questionnaire looks like. And I'm going to go back to the question flow, and you'll see it's very similar to what we just showed. The only difference is I have a little bit more meaningful question attached. A yes goes to Q5, a no goes to Q10. So this is an example of, when I fill it out on the iPad, once I get to question 4, if I select yes, I'm going to go to question 5 and keep going. And when I go to question, if I hit no, I'm going to go to question 10. Another thing to note is because I'm going to be branching once I, leave this question, it needs to know, well, where do you go? I want to skip, section 3. If I'm in the branch of section 2, I don't want to go to section 3 if I leave it. So section 4 is selected as where it goes when it leaves section 2. So if you're in the branch of question 4, you go through the section 2. Once you reach question 9, the next question will be the first question of section 4. So that's how you control where a branch lands. So that's something to pay attention to, especially if you're changing the questionnaire, if you're changing the sections after the fact. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go to the iPad. Try stop the share here on the iPad and see if I can do that. Okay, it's starting the broadcast. Okay, my screen's up. So this is the homepage on the iPad. Many of you are probably familiar with this. So our app is at the top left there. I'm just going to select that. The app opens up, touch for identification. And this is the home screen here. To review the questionnaires that are already loaded, if you hit operation and then you go to the questionnaire templates on the left, very much like mission control, you'll see the questionnaires I've created, including that real-time demo that I just built that automatically synced. You don't create the questionnaires from the templates here, but you can select them and review them. So you can confirm what the questions are going to be and what the information is going to be in the questionnaire right here, but you can't change anything. This is just a read-only way to confirm what the questionnaire looks like, especially if you have several questionnaires that are very similar. So to create a questionnaire, there's a couple ways to do it. One way to do it is if you click this little grid at the very top of the screen, it takes you back to those menu tiles at the beginning. You can have an add questionnaire button on this menu screen, which I do. So if you select that, it's going to ask you, which questionnaire do you want to create? I'm going to do the one that, oops, actually seeing that one. Go back to the list. Okay, it's on. Try this again. Okay, so it's not showing me the questionnaire that I had. Okay. So I'll go back to the screen here. Add question. Okay, there it is finally. So I select that, and then this is the questionnaire. So there's that yes, no question. It's required, so you see required at the bottom right. If you select yes, you've answered it, and you hit next, go to the next question. This is the location question I was referring to. So by default, it locates it based on your current position. If you hit change, you get the crosshairs. You can move it anywhere you want. You can even zoom in on the map, and when you stop, it will then try to retrieve the address for that location. You can override that address if you wish, if it's not accurate enough. Next, so this is a multi-select case where you can actually just select a couple options, select next. This is where that branch starts. There's a yes, no question. So if I hit yes, you don't see it, but it's now loaded the subsequent sections after that. So I hit next. Now ask these follow-up questions. This is the date one. So if you select that, I'm sorry, well, the date one is a multiple choice. You select that option. It's in menu mode. If I select next, this is the one asking about the date. It pulls up a date at the bottom. So you or the user can just change those values. And the date is entered in that field. That ensures that people enter dates in a proper format. This is a numeric one where you can just add, a numeric value. This is a range question, asking, intensity of something. So user selects that, hit next, and then this is a, matrix question where, you can insert one per question. And then finally, this is one asking for some personal information. We've got to prefer not to answer, so they don't have to give their name, but they can enter into the field, if they wish. Hit next. And finally, at the end of the questionnaire, they have the submit. So the questionnaire is complete. It's not saved until you actually hit the submit option, and then it's actually saved onto the iPad. So if I go to the assets section here, hitting this tile, this will show all of the questionnaires. I pre-filled out some of them. I just filled out that one that was twirling. Another way to add a questionnaire is from this screen right here. There's a plus button at the bottom right. If you hit plus and you select questionnaire, it'll bring up that little panel asking which questionnaire you want to create. So you can just create them right here. The green circle indicates that it was successfully synced to Mission Control and Design Safe. So I'm going to leave here and go back to Mission Control. Go to my desktop. Okay. So I'm going to a different view in Mission Control here. So we were in the questionnaire templates. I'm going to the assets section. So in the assets section of Mission Control, that's where you can review data that you've collected, not just questionnaires, but other data as well. For example, if I select this little panel to the left and I select the project that I created for this, it will load the data that I've collected for that project, which are these questionnaires, and you'll see them in a list to the left here, and you'll see them on the map where they are actually gathered. Now these are not the locations of that location question type. This is just the coordinates the iPad gathered of where that data was collected. So if you add the location question type and you change it, you're not going to see it reflected here. On the right here, so this is the map view. On the right, there's a few different views, different ways of looking at the data you've collected. This is the map view. It's kind of useful to see maybe where you've canvassed or where you've been. The metadata is a way to look at the metadata associated with the data you've collected. This is more useful probably for other data types. And finally, there's a question viewer, which is what we developed, just for these questionnaires. So in the questionnaire viewer, you have the option, what it will do is it will group all of the data by the questionnaire type. So if you have 4 different questionnaire templates and you filled out 10 questionnaires for each one, they will all be grouped together here, and you'll only see the ones you actually have data for. So I have 4 responses, 4 times it's been filled out for this one. So if I select that, it'll take me over to this view. And this is a table view, very much like Excel, of the data that's been collected. So all of those questions now are reading left to right. And if there are questions, for example, that have a sub-question, like question 6 here, it will have a different ID indicating that this is a sub-question to Q6. If you get to the matrix questions, like Q13 here, A will be the first row, B will be the second row, C will be the third row. So because we're going to make this data downloadable in a CSV format, we have to serialize the structure of the questions. So sometimes you'll have a question where you have a sub-question or something like that. It will be reflected here with a slightly different name, but the principal part of it will be based on the actual QID, the questionnaire ID you saw yourself, Q1, Q2, Q3. So this shows the information gathered for all of the questionnaires that, I filled out so far. And down below here, it's got one, I moved the location way off, and it, gathered an address. So you see the coordinate for the location, but you also see the address itself. If a field has a lot of text, if you have somebody fill out a text field and several paragraphs, when you hover over the field, a little box will pop up showing you all of that information. So by default, it is showing all of the responses, and especially we have some multiple choice ones here. Those are all displayed as a user would have seen it when they were filling it out, what we call the label. But instead, if you want to see what it looks like from the variable view, you can select this option to the top right. The options will slide out, and under responses, you have the label view, which is what we're looking at, or you have the variable view. Now it's going to show you what it looks like from that variable perspective. In a minute here, I'm going to download the CSV of this. And it's important to note that whatever you see here in this table, whatever options you have set, that is what the CSV is going to look like. So if you do want the labels to be in the CSV, then you need to select that label view. But if you want to actually see the variables, then select the variable option. Similarly, you can control what the heading of the CSV will look like. So by default here, we're showing the ID of each question, Q1, Q2, etc. But you also have the option of seeing what is the variabilized name of that question, the thing that you specified if you wish to look for. And that helps identify questions a little bit. But also note, that will be what is displayed as the column heads in Excel for the CSV. The gray question number now will not be part of the heading. It'll just be the black text below. So if you want the variabilized version of the questions displayed, select that option and you'll see that. Or if you wish, you can also just have the label of the question as part of the heading. So when the data is downloaded, these full text strings will be part of the heading. So I'm just going to select variable for both of those. And so this is how I want it to look. So I select the upper right here. There's a download icon. If I select that, it created and downloaded the CSV file automatically. So I can see below it's done that. So if I go to my desktop, I'm going to see, oh, a new file was created. It's that CSV file. So if I analyze it in my text editor, yep, looks like a CSV file. So you have all of the rows separated by commas. And instead, if I actually wanted to just look at it in Excel, I can just drag it down here and it'll open it up and there's all of the data. And you might have to expand some of the fields to see everything, but all that data is now displayed in the Excel. So once you've downloaded that CSV file, that's what you would work with, if you're have any scripts or you want to do any processing. So I know that was a really quick overview of the process, but as you can see, we've added a ton of capabilities, a ton of features, and there are a lot of things you can do, with the structure of our advanced questionnaires now. And as I pointed out with this first screen, you needed the design safe account to be able to actually work with mission control, be able to use RApp. Please contact us via Rapid if you have any questions or comments about acquiring an iPad or after you've used the RApp capabilities, the advanced questionnaires. And finally, at the bottom, once you have your design safe account, you can sign into that, go to that URL, sign in, and you can start creating questionnaires. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending today, and I think I'll pass it back to Lori.
Troy, thank you so much for this overview, and it is so exciting to see the progress that you, Joe, and the entire team at APL and the Rapid have made with this. So just thank you for sharing and for the comprehensive demo. To the participants out there, thank you for sticking with us. We apologize for running a little long, but we wanted to make sure and have a full recording of the demo of this so we can share it with others. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions. We know we weren't able to get to all of them in the chat, but we will provide written responses to the remainder of the questions that we couldn't answer today. So before we wrap up, just in a second, we just wanted to make sure and acknowledge the National Science Foundation, especially our program directors, Joy Pauschke and Jack Mazzaros, for Rapid and Converge, respectively, and just thank you for the NSF for making the work of these facilities possible and this webinar series. And we also, again, want to thank all of you for being here today, and a special thanks to Joe Wortman and Troy Tanner for their incredible innovations. And last but not least, just please remember, we will post the recording of this webinar plus the slides up on the Converge website. And we hope you will sign up at Converge for future webinars as well as other free resources. And please contact us at converge@colorado.edu if you have any questions. And as Troy said, you can contact the Rapid facility directly through their page on the NERI Rapid website. So without further ado, everyone have a safe weekend. And thank you again to Joe and Troy for your extraordinary work. Please take care, everyone. Bye.